morning, everyone. My name is Dia. Welcome back to Novel Idea, or welcome. This is Poppy, who doesn't like her picture taken. At least not with me holding her, she doesn't. Videos, end of the year, it's time for my favorite fiction of 2023. All right, so one of the things I did not include in this is any of the rereads that I did. So I did quite a bit of rereading this year, especially in December because it was Remember December, and I wanted to participate in that. But I didn't include any rereads on my favorites of the year. So I am going to go through them, and these are in no particular order, but I am going to start with what would have been mentioned if I was including rereads. My Antonia, and this is by Willa Cather. And I would have said that this was my favorite Cather that I read this year. Antigone was my favorite plays that I read this year. Dandelion Wine is my favorite Ray Bradbury, and I tend to reread it every year, so it would have gotten mentioned. And Nicholas Nickleby is my favorite Dickens, and I reread that this year, and I would have mentioned it. I had two that were middle grade that I reread. One was The Genius of Willie McMichael by George MacDonald, and the other one was The Beatrice Prophecy by Kate DiCamillo. So the only other one that I reread sort of, and I say sort of because I had read several of the stories / essays in this book, but I had not read all of them, and that was Labyrinths by Jorge Luis Borges. You need to lay down. Be a good girl. You don't want to get up there? Do you want to get in my lap again? You can get in my lap. Yeah, you can get in here. That's fine. So, yes. So those were like honorable mentions, rereads. But now, on to what was brand new to me this year that I absolutely loved. And like I said, no particular order. So, first off, is the Rhea Revelations. I read this whole series this year and was one of my, it has become one of my favorite fantasy series. I really loved it. It was just a really fun time. I started off the first book with Amy, who is a commenter on the channel and a subscriber, and we had such a good time. But when I was ready to move on, she wasn't quite ready to yet. So I ended up finishing the series by myself, but I loved it. I just thought it was wonderful. So fantasy series, it's about two very good friends who don't really know each other's backgrounds very well, and one is extremely serious and the other one is just a light-hearted, very kind man, and the two of them together make up Rhea, which is a thief company. And it's just the two of them, and then some good friends that they kind of include sometimes. You need to stop on jobs. it doesn't sound like it would be that exciting. I found it wonderful. I think it has all of your normal fantasy tropes in it. It has, you know, monsters and adventure and wizards and just elves and all kinds of things in it. It was fun. I really enjoyed it. So, Rhea Revelations, that's the first one. Then we have Babettes Feast. Babettes Feast was a book that I discovered while I was reading a Flannery O'Connor book. And somewhere I found a talk that was comparing Flannery O'Connor's short stories and short stories by Isak Dinesen, Babettes Feast in particular. And so I picked up Babettes Feast because I wanted to know what it was that was so special about Babettes Feast. And I absolutely loved it, you guys. It quickly just took space in my heart. It was such a human story, and it was hopeful, and it was positive. It was a positive forward story, and it still was very human, still dealt with people that were flawed and people that needed revelation about things in order to bring about change in their lives. And it was still just so hopeful, so beautiful. Next up is This Is Happiness by Niall Williams. What a surprise this book was. This is about a disgruntled youth who has been at seminary school in Ireland, and he's just not sure that he's on the right path in life. And so he just goes home. He just decides that he needs to just be a normal person for a while. And he goes home to discover if this is really what he should be doing for the rest of his life. And it's this very mundane, simple, quiet story about, I mean, it has its funny moments, but it's basically just about life in this teeny tiny Irish hamlet before electricity comes. And they don't even, I think there might be one car in the whole little village. It's just about the people, it's about interactions, it's about relationship, and it was wonderful. I just loved it. And I didn't expect to. It is a contemporary book and by a contemporary author, and I just did not expect to like it as much as I did. So, yeah. This Is Happiness by Niall Williams. Then we have Return of the Thief, the whole Queen's Thief series. Very unknown series, and one that I really liked. I think the first book is marketed as middle grade, and it is not a middle grade, or at least not a lower middle grade, maybe upper. But it has a few pacing issues, but other than that, it's not something that I would expect. I guess I would expect more people to just really like this book and this whole series, because the main character is somebody that I just immediately latched onto. Well, I can't say immediately. It took me a little bit, but I like him. And I like who he is throughout the entire 6 books of the series. They are not long books. And I'm so surprised that I am not hearing more about it, because it's wonderful. It's absolutely wonderful. It is about a young thief who is actually, that is his office, his place in society. And it can be a place of honor and renown. And at the beginning of the series, you think that that is what he is all about. He is all about the prestige and renown that he is going to bring to his, family name kind of thing. And it quickly evolves, and you find out that he is much more than what he appears at the beginning. I just really enjoyed the whole series, watching him grow up, all of the changes in the kingdoms. It was so good. All right, so the next one is Abigail by Magda Szabo. And another one that was a big surprise for me. I heard about this from Alana Estelle, and when she explained what it was, I thought, I'm gonna give it a try. That was my whole thing. I'm gonna give it a try. And I just kept waiting for something to happen that was gonna make me DNF the book, and it never did. And I ended up really, really enjoying it. It's about a young girl. I'm trying to remember, I think it was in Hungary, and her father is in the military, and in order to keep her safe, she doesn't know it's for that reason, but in order to keep her safe, he puts her in a very militaristic private girls' school. Militaristic in the fact that it's very closed door. It is very order-centric, I guess is a good way to say it. And so she ends up trying to be somebody that is worthy of being saved. And it's also about friends unbeknownst to us, and people who are on our side that we're just not aware of. And it just was such a lovely, lovely story, in my opinion. So then we have How Do You Live? You can see by the cover that it looks like it's manga or manhwa, and it is not. It is a story that is about a set of friends, young boys, who are unlikely in their friendships, at least in many ways. And the main boy that the story is being told, one of the points of view that the story is being told from, his father has died. He's living with his mother, and his uncle is helping to raise him, so his father's brother. And it's these teachable moments that the uncle takes with his nephew in order to bring him up to be a man that is kind and honorable and is going to contribute to society in a beautiful way. And the uncle had promised the father that he was going to do this. And so that's what it is. That's the whole story is just these teachable moments that come about where he is able to impart something or say, well done, or just all of these different things. And yet it is very much a boy's story. It's just lovely. I'm gonna say that about all of these. I like it so much. So, how do you live? Then we have Lark Rise to Candleford. This is a set of 3 short novels that are bound up often as one, and it's called Lark Rise to Candleford for the whole thing. So I read this with Stephanie from Miss Richards Reads, and we both really, really enjoyed these stories. There are some that kind of bored us a little bit, and there are a couple moments in there where you're like, okay, I've heard enough of that. But for the most part, these were stories that were completely endearing, so enchanting and charming, and just, I think it reminds me so much of the same feeling that I get oftentimes from Anne of Green Gables or Little Women, just kind of almost a mashup of the two of those things, like The Secret Garden or something like that. It's this mashup of these wonderful memories of her childhood, and the childhood in 1800s Victorian England in a little tiny hamlet of, I want to say that she said there were like 8 houses in this little hamlet. And it's just the sweet traditions and what it was like growing up there, and the draw to not stay, and yet the draw to go home also. And just, it was so good. It was just so good. Flora Thompson is the author of that. I'm sorry. Then we have Combat Codes, completely different kind of book. This is by Andrew Darwin, or Alexander Darwin. I'm sorry, Alexander Darwin. It's the beginning of a series. I have not read on in the series yet. I just really loved this, and this is not the kind of book that I would have expected to like. It is a fantasy, sci-fi mashup with MMA, with mixed martial arts kind of fights in it. However, even though there is some fighting, which is not my favorite part of the book, the favorite part for me comes from this backstory of our main character and the idea of these combat codes, which are very political in their nature. Even though it sounds combat, you know, you would think war, but no, it's actually to prevent war. And it's just, it was fascinating. It was fast-paced. It was fun. It was, the characters are easy to like and easy to hate. And I just found it absolutely engulfing. I couldn't put it down. I read it twice. That's how much I liked it. I read it toward the beginning of the year, and then I just read it again. Next is Sword of Kaigan. Sword of Kaigan. I drug my feet on this book for a long time. I had friends that were reading it, friends that were saying how good it was. Hillary at Bookborn actually said when she reviewed it that there were some, trigger warnings in the book. And so I kind of pulled back a little bit, And then when I found out what the trigger warnings were, I pulled back a little bit further, and I just thought, this is not the kind of book that I really want to read if that's the case. And then my friend Tiffany read the book, and she liked it so much, and she was hesitant to tell me to read it because she knew about the trigger warnings. But you guys, the situations that the trigger warnings are about are handled so brilliantly in this book. And the writing and the atmosphere and the characters and all of it is just so well done. M.L. Wang, or Wong, I don't know which way you say it, but she just did incredibly well. And it needs to have more books written in this series, but she just doesn't feel like she has the life experience and capabilities yet to write more in this world. And I think she really wants to do it justice. And so I am just so excited for whenever that happens, because this was brilliant. I didn't love the ending, but it was still such a brilliant novel, such a brilliant fantasy. And the other thing is that it's set in a contemporary world, although the specific place, Kaigan, that it takes place in is like time has stood still there. And it's like being in ancient Japan or something. It's fascinating, absolutely fascinating. Then we have another play that I read for the first time, and that is Serino de Bergerac. You guys, I did not expect this book to get under my skin the way it did. It was funny and poignant and absolutely charming and beautiful. The writing it captured me. I absolutely loved it. Oh my goodness, what a story. If you don't know, Serino de Bergerac is about a man who almost is deformed with the size of his nose, and therefore feels completely unlovable. He is smart, he is witty, he is kind, he's good to the people who are respectable. He is very sharp-tongued if he feels that you need a sharp tongue, but he's also very just generous with his heart and his affections. And he has a cousin that I think it's a cousin that he's in love with, and he's just sure that he can't be loved. And so when he finds out that there is somebody that he thinks is honorable, that he finds out that they quite possibly love her also, he sets about helping him to win her heart. And so, yes, it was so good. It was so good. And then finally, my last book that I want to go over for the fiction of 2023 is a book that also surprised me. I heard about it from Kelly at Books I'm Not Reading and Kim at Middle of the Book March. And it is a Pulitzer Prize winning novel, but I had never heard of it. Never read it. It's called Now in November. It's by Josephine Johnson, and it is about a set of sisters. Particularly, it's about their family, but it's about the three sisters in particular. It's in the middle of the 1930s when the Dust Bowl was happening, when the stock market crashed and it caused the Depression in America, and their family was deeply affected by that. And so this is the story of them trying to survive that, and the ability to do that by them being more available emotionally and just soul-wise, the availability to survive these times of incredible poverty and need, being more available to some members of the family than to others, and just how it affects all of them and what happens as a result of having to go through so many years of drought and the poverty of everything. So what a lovely author she was to read. I really enjoyed meeting her on page, and it was just wonderful, wonderful. I think that you will get from most of these that they were very mundane. I like beautiful, elevated mundanity in my books, and a lot of these were like that. So just real quick, some that are honorable mentions that I read for the first time this year that just didn't quite make the list. They were still wonderful, but they didn't quite make my absolute favorites are Foster by Claire Keegan, little short novella, the David trilogy, which I read the whole series of this year with Jack from Spreadbook Joy, Cold Enough for Snow, which is by Jessica Au. And that is another very mundane story about a woman in her maybe mid-30s that really would like to connect with her mom. And so they go on a trip together, and it's a short novella about that. And then Ascendant, which is by Michael R. Miller, and it is the first book in a series, fantasy series, about a dragon rider. And so those ones I would mention as ones that were definitely favorites during the year, but didn't quite make my absolute favorites. Okay, that's everything, you guys. Thanks so much for joining me. I hope maybe you found something that you haven't read that you might like to read. And if you have read any of these, do you agree with me? Is there something on my list that you are like, how could you even like that? And I would love to hear if you have been inspired to pick something up from this list. All right, thanks everyone. I will talk to you again very soon. Like if you liked it, subscribe if you want to. Can you say bye? Bye to the people.